Hey y'all, welcome to the Team LocoFit Roundtable, hosted by me, Laurin Conlon, owner of Team LocoFit. Each week, I am joined by one of our coaches to dive headfirst into the nutrition, training, mindset, and coaching strategies we use with our clients. If you loved the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, you know the drill. And for more information about coaching, the programs we offer, and additional content, visit teamlocofit.com.
All right, and we are back, and I'm with Coach Gill.
Hey.
Again, super cool intro.
Some more incentive to check out YouTube.
Sick hand moves, dude.
I know, right?
So today we're going to talk about body recomp and essentially just diet cycles and what to expect. And you wanted to do this. It's going to be kind of like a little mini case podcast study on you. And because you had a conversation with a client about, we have conversations about this all the time.
Oh yeah.
But there was a conversation that sparked this, and we wanted to kind of go through your history, kind of like over the past 10 years, like a little condensed version of that. Yeah. Obviously. Everybody's like, we're tuning out.
Pretty long story.
The never-ending story of Gillian's diet history.
Oh, God.
But really, it's to showcase how over these 10 years, things have, changed, and, where you start and what you do in between is not always where you're going to end up.
Yeah. Exactly.
So let's bring it back to the very first, before you ever dieted.
Started when I was born. No, just kidding.
So when I was born, I was this many pounds.
Oh, yeah.
So what?
I mean, I was a heavy baby, but
Me too.
Anyway.
I don't think anybody's surprised by that.
We don't need to get into that. But we're going all the way back to like 2010. And my starting weight when, I started kicking off everything was 180 pounds.
And you're how tall?
I'm like 5'2", I think.
Yeah.
About, so.
Well, max 5'2".
Yeah, max 5'2". Yeah, and I'm a pretty small human, but I mean, when I look at pictures, it doesn't look like that, but I was 180 pounds, and that was the heaviest I've ever been. And yeah, when I kicked things off, I didn't really track anything. I kind of just started common sense eating is what I kind of called it. And over the span of maybe like 2 or 3 years, I dropped back down to, my lowest weight of like 105. And at that time, I would consider that underweight for me at that time.
And very, not a lot of muscle, right?
Yeah,
like
very kind of frail looking. I thought I looked athletic. I didn't. I wish I had pictures of that time too. I think I deleted most of them, but yeah, I was
classic.
I know, right? Oh, so convenient. But I was pretty underweight at the time. I wasn't really training. But over the span of those 3 years, I did pretty much just drop my food, or at least make some good choices. I started exercising in my basement. I did a lot of body weight stuff, and then I started just doing more cardio stuff. Not a lot of weight training at all, from the looks of it, obviously. But
that's standard. I mean, you were in high school. Most people. I weight trained in high school, but I'm a meathead, and you know what I mean. So it's but most people don't do that.
No, yeah. So it was whatever weights I had in my basement.
Were you doing any sports at the time?
I did sports before high school, so I grew up playing. I think I played at least every sport at one point. The main ones just being softball, basketball, and track and field.
But during this time, where you were not?
But this time I wasn't. I actually quit sports for art before I even got into high school. I know, because I went to an art high school too. So by that time, I had dropped all that extra activity. I know, right? I'm such an art nerd. But I dropped all that extra activity by the time, I was entering high school. So that likely played a part in it too. Yeah. When I was going to high school, I was commuting to Manhattan every day. And it was this new independence, I guess, which also kind of led into, those more negative eating habits, and kind of that mindset of I can do whatever I want because I'm an adult now, or not really, but
you're 14.
Exactly.
Think you're an adult.
Stops for M&Ms on the way home. This is independence.
Yeah.
Kind of the mindset I was in there, but it's so weird thinking about the stuff I used to eat. Oh my God.
M&Ms are so good. So
I mean, M&Ms.
But I get it. But when you get the pack, right?
I used to get the sharing size.
Oh yeah, who shares that?
Of course, no one. Don't ask for my M&Ms.
But then you look, and then you're like, oh shit! I just ate all these.
Yeah.
It's so, and it's hard because that literally design we're already off track, but whatever. Hyper palatable foods are designed to make you like
want them more,
and they don't make you full, because if they made you full, then you would stop. You know what I mean? So it's like it tastes really, really good.
It's all like a food science, basically. Like
it's
they literally,
crazy.
Like, I did my undergrad in nutrition and food science, and literally like the stuff we would learn in like these labs are just like, they literally test these things in like trials. They have people come in and they're like, rate how the crunchiness is, like rate what you're thinking, what are you feeling, like do you want to eat more? It's like insane how much work goes into like creating these foods.
And that's why you can open a bag of M&Ms and eat it, and you're like, wow, where did they go?
Yes, exactly.
Anyways, so little Gillian, who thinks she is independent with M&Ms.
With my M&Ms and
so
other shit I won't even go into, but yeah.
So you diet, you get down pretty low, but not really like an athletic 105, just kind
definitely
of
not an athletic 105. I was more frail, pretty tiny. I remember like I would stand up and I would just get a little bit lightheaded. Like I was really tiny. Pretty much is the only way I would describe it. You know, I feel like, you know, maybe my face was a little like really thin. You can tell like I was just like not eating that much. And by that time I had started looking at numbers, but I definitely didn't know anything about how much I was eating in a day. So by that time when I was underweight, and I was in that part of, you know, everything where I needed to find like a balance after that, because obviously I was terrified of going back to where I started. The whole reason that I dieted in the first place was because, you know, I wanted to feel better about myself. I wanted to just completely change everything. But, you know, hey, what happens when the diet's over, right? And I didn't know much about what I was doing. So a lot of it was trial and error and just like looking up, you know, what do I do next? And part of that was thinking about like, hey, like I have to eat more, I guess. Like I can't diet forever, because, you know, I wanted to be able to go out and eat and not have to stress about it.
It's cool that you intuitively knew that, even, you know, at a young age without really a lot of education. With food education.
Yeah, because
this is still like, pre-undergrad.
Yeah, this is pre-undergrad still. And I knew like, you know, I was cognizant of the fact that like, hey, like if I went away for a weekend to visit my sister at school, because they had started college at that point, and I was maybe in my last year of high school, and I knew like I was stressing out about going away for a weekend to visit her, because hey, like that means we're having meals out, that means I'm not in control of everything, and I knew that was an issue, and it was something that weighed on me a lot. So by that point, you know, I remember talking to my mom about it. I'm like, hey, I don't know what to do, like I need to, like, you know, how do I balance this? So basically, you know, what we kind of talked through was like, you know, I need to increase my food, but at the same time, like I could take advantage of this and maybe like start lifting weights and put on some good, quote unquote, good weight, you know, make those other changes. Yeah, get jacked, bro. But yeah, I started, you know, working on just increasing my food incrementally. And that's kind of when I started tracking things and being a little bit more specific with my calorie intake, and that's kind of what I started with. You know, I was measuring stuff out initially, and I was definitely eating at that point. I was trying to restrict as much as possible, so I was probably around like the 1100 calorie mark if I had to give an average per day, which is really low.
And probably like still not the best like probably choices, right? Like it was probably like you were looking at calories, but maybe not like the foods you were eating, right?
Yeah. I feel like I would try to go into specifics about like what I was eating when I was dieting, but I was definitely trying to, you know, obviously you just get a lot of protein and veggies, right? I think for breakfast I would just eat like plain egg whites and something else, like to keep it like just
depressing.
Yeah, it was like depressing, dude. I can't. But anyway,
you're like, you don't even like
come along. Them. Exactly, I didn't season.
That's always like one of the worst things when people tell me they, you know.
And I remember I didn't really used to like salt anything at all.
Horror show.
Yeah.
Salt is your friend.
Exactly. That's what lack of information does to you when you're trying to diet.
Did you get Instagram diet advice?
Oh my god!
Thank God. Dude, could you imagine going back to this, right? Where
I can't imagine going back to like a day of eating at this point, because
imagine being in that place and then stumbling on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
You probably would have been like, oh, this sounds legit. Like anybody now would.
Exactly, yeah.
That's what's so scary.
At this point in time, I was like just trying to. I remember being on like the bodybuilding.com forums and like looking through like you know what this is, like what is tracking macro, like what is like how do I structure this?
What is this?
So that's kind of what translated, hey, like these calories I'm eating, like now I'm bumping up to 1,200, now I'm bumping up to 1,300, and I'm making sure to get protein, and I'm making sure to like incorporate these things. And I remember the first time I started playing around with like flexible dieting and adding in like a serving of M&Ms and being okay with that. And I remember the first time I did that, I was like, oh shit, what did I do? Like, that's so weird, because I was in this mode of like, I just need to be on it, but at the same time it felt good because, hey, I'm like within my targets for the day, or like I'm adhering to, this plan I'm setting out, and I'm still like really enjoying the snack I'm having. And it's not the end of the world, I went to bed and I woke up and I'm alive and nothing happened. So
yeah, it's so cool that you were able to do that, because a lot of people really struggle. Like that transition would have been really, really rough for most people. And even, I mean, the information is different now, right? Like I know you said you looked at the bodybuilding.com forums, like what I used to look at the magazines.
Names on this either. Like I didn't really think of this as like reverse dieting.
Yeah, you just were doing.
I was just like adding food because obviously I'm not trying to diet forever.
But that was always what was so, I guess, frustrating or confusing with the information that was put out, right? Like whether it's like a forum or whether it was an article or whether it was a magazine edit or whatever it was, and it's always just like, hey, here's this, and there's no real like context behind it, so it was cool that you were intuitively, and that's probably like taking your creative side, like obviously like you went to art school, you're a creative person, and you were like, oh well, let me try to put this together, and like so that probably played a huge role in that, being able to transition instead of being like, oh, let me just keep doing this and then develop a bunch of gnarly, terrible habits down the road, where you're either only eating M&Ms or only eating diet food. So that was,
thank God,
dodged that bullet. So I know. We're good there.
And that kind of brought me, like, I was like super interested in like, wait, why am I doing this? Like, I need to look more into like this whole process. Like, if I'm gonna actually make these changes and feel okay with myself, and also make this something that like I enjoy, I really need to like actually look into what I'm doing. That kind of led me to like read more articles on it, and then I got super interested.
And then went to school.
I literally changed like my path of everything like the week before applications were due. Like literally, I was sitting on the couch and my mom was like, maybe you should like check out like nutrition or something like that. And I was like, I was kind of thinking that. And then the next week at school, I went to my advisor and I was like, hey, like what schools should I look at for this? This totally different thing, not related to what I just went to high school for 4 years. And that's kind of what led me to kind of go down the nutrition RD route, which, obviously I didn't end up going for my RD, but that kind of, again, led me to working out and getting serious about my training, getting into macro tracking, again, just tinkering around with my own food and what worked, what didn't. And, at that point, I stumbled upon, of course, competitive athletes, physique competitions, and I got super interested in that. I don't exactly remember who I saw for the first time, but I just saw and I was like, I want to look like that person. So that really kicked things off for me, where I started looking into training more. Again, back to like the forums, or getting ideas for training, and that kind of went in conjunction with just like tinkering with my own food and kind of playing around with myself as like my own little guinea pig. Of course, I made mistakes along the way because as I worked my food up, sometimes some of it I did kind of like get a little too laid back with. I did get back up to like around 140, which at the time I don't think I was very comfortable with at all. But at the same time, I had less muscle mass than I do now. But
so like where are we kind of now? Like timeline wise, you're back up to around 140. You're learning more. You're discovering things. I'm
training. I know more about like how to structure my training split. This is definitely like I'm in my undergrad at this point. And I think this kind of led me. This is probably the beginning of 2016 here. And then, when I worked my food up, I would say this kind of like a folk or like a weird bulking phase that I did when I got up to 140.
Everybody does one of those.
Yeah, because I was really good. I was like pretty, stable around like the 120s. But, as I got like super into it, I was like, I want to like build muscle and all this stuff. So
I gotta eat 10,000 calories as a 5'2" chick.
Exactly. I looked back and I was like, I was definitely doing this wrong. But we all make mistakes, right?
Dirty bulk.
Yeah. So then, of course, as I get into tracking macros and learning, I'm like, well, I guess I can go through another dieting phase, right? And this time it was super weird because I was actually doing this with the macros and dropping things on my own and adding cardio on my own. And I wish I had a better idea of like what cardio I was doing, because I don't think I kept an eye on that as much. I just said like, oh, I'll just do a session here and there, like whatever. But I ended up, going through another dieting phase on my own. And I got from like 140 down to like 114 on my own within, like that summer of 2016, I would say. And then, that's kind of leads us into when I started working with Laurin and when I reached out to her for coaching. And, that's kind of when we went into our first reverse diet together. And that's kind of when I learned the term reverse diet for the first time.
And we did, of course there were still mistakes along the way, but that's when all the pieces kind of really came together. And you responded great, and then we did 2 seasons back to back, so you're still in your undergrad. We're going through competitive bodybuilding, which competitive bodybuilding is dropping below, like you said, like you got to like 114 pretty easy, but not really like a huge issue. Once we have to get below that, like kind of for you, it's really hard, right? And everybody has those layers. That's why I never recommend people compete just for fun. And here's why. Well, there's a lot of reasons. You're getting judged by strangers in bikini. Not really the best thing for your self-esteem.
For the shits and giggles.
Just for fun. I get that people want an extreme goal, but I'm like, hey, let's stop a little bit before that and just do a cool photo shoot.
Let's do like a photo shoot or something like that.
We don't need to get on stage, because not only can it be very detrimental psychologically for various reasons.
Yeah, but physically it's very taxing. And mentally.
Physically, it's like, I don't know the right term, but I almost feel like it's like you flip this switch and your body's like, metabolic adaptations. You know what I mean? Like imagine like one of those really aggressive like switches that you're flipping. That's what I feel like it does in your body. And it could be 3 pounds, I don't care. But now you've elicited this cascade of hormonal and metabolic adaptations, which are very normal for getting that lean, but not normal or something that we want to deal with if you're not getting that lean. I've had clients who they're not getting on stage this year, right? Or any year, right? But like, hey, I want to diet down and I want to get really close to like show lean, and then we'll reverse and we'll compete next year. And I'm like, no, we'll get leaner. We're not getting staged. I'm not putting you through that for the fuck of it. Like this is not something that is easy to recover from. And it does take time. So, I say all that because, we did 2 back-to-back seasons, and then there were some other hormonal issues that you had to deal with along the way. And then, we kind of got up to a weight that was a little bit more uncomfortable, but it was because of
these other underlying issues.
So many things.
Yeah, a lot of factors, I think.
And it wasn't like you just stopped eating right. It wasn't like you stopped training. Like
no, exactly. I'm one of those people where like if I'm trying to get like a certain goal, or if I have these long-term goals, I'm gonna keep stuff in check. And I think this kind of brings us forward to 2019, I guess, for like this year and a half off season that I had. Of course I anticipated on competing again, but stuff happens and you have to take your health comes first, right? So if things aren't functioning the way they should, you're not going to diet, or at least you shouldn't be dieting. No. Especially, since we did try mini cut and nothing happened.
It was one of the and that sometimes
and that happens sometimes.
It's actually sometimes good to do those, because then you can see how somebody's responding, and it was a very clear indicator like you're not ready, right? And I've done those too. I've done cuts where I would try stuff for a few weeks and it was like, nothing's moving. And it's not because I wasn't being adherent. It's not because really the reason that your body was just like, no.
It's like, hold up, lady. No.
But then when we did decide to do the actual, diet, you were like, hey, let's just start a prep, right? Like we have a good amount of weight. We knew we had a good amount of weight to lose because of all those factors that we talked about. So you were like, I would rather just mentally kind of commit to this. And I was like, all right, like I get that, because it's just, and of course the beginning of a prep is not like that hard. It really wasn't bad until the last few months.
Yeah, it really wasn't like all of that was a prep, I would say. It was like, part of this was like for me mentally, just like having some kind of goal to set.
Yeah. We still have some flexibility. Like, it wasn't.
Yeah, and I feel like we
terrible.
dropped the first, like, I want to say the first 20 pounds of that rather easily.
Yes.
There were like there was a large span of time that we didn't really have to change anything at all, and things were pretty steady. And I should note that, like, I did make some changes with like what I was doing, with my IUD and stuff like that, because I did feel like that played a part into just like a lot of inflammation that I was having.
Yeah, you had a negative reaction there, and
yeah.
I talk to clients a lot, obviously about birth control because I coach mostly females. And, a lot of people will ask me do you have a preferred method you'd like somebody to use, or like, what are your thoughts on this and that? And IUDs are very 50-50. I have some clients who use them with no issues. They love them. It's great. They have no problems with them. I have other people who have a lot of problems with them.
Yeah, and I was one of those people.
Jill was definitely one of those people.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem that I see is often, because it is inserted, if it starts to move, it basically creates this low-grade pelvic inflammation. And that's what you literally can see it.
Yeah, I have pictures, actually. I was just looking through my camera roll the other day.
Yeah. It was all in your stomach, like, literally.
All in my stomach, and even just like my hips, I think, too.
Yeah.
I would just wake up, I looked like I drank a gallon of water before I even woke up that morning.
Yeah, very inflamed.
All in my abdomen. And, there's like a lot of other side effects, too. I had like constant pain on my right side. I had like dry patches around my eyes. My skin was bad. Just overall, it's like bleh.
There was a lot of issues. So that was part of why that initial weight drop was easier, because that was your body going like the other way. Like, it wasn't.
It's like, hey, like, we don't have this other thing kind of messing with me right now. And that's not to say, of course, like, it's bad. It's just one of those things where, like, hey, birth control, just everyone responds so differently to it. And that's not something you can necessarily say, like, this is good, this is bad, whatever.
You just kind of have to try it.
Kind of have to try that out and see for yourself. But for me personally, it didn't really work out.
That was not super helpful. That was part of the reason that there was so much to lose. But then once we got back to kind of like, I would say, a normal weight, and then we had to drop down for like the rest of contest prep, that was, that's when we kind of like, okay,
that's
now it's pedal to the metal, like, we gotta go.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's standard, and that's, you are a small person. We've already discussed that. Like, it's not like you're, this very tall or super heavy kind of person. So you're going to eat less, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the way that it works.
Yeah.
But all of this background to say that, unfortunately, you had to call the season early because all the shows were getting canceled. And we really didn't have an end in sight, and it was going to be too long to push it because
for sure.
You had been dieting for a while, and
I would say we started that prep, like diet / prep, end of August, I would say, July maybe. So that starting point was again at 140. Of course, we could compare pictures and see body comp was different there too. But we did go from 140 down to like 110 for like when we cut prep off.
Yeah, and that's usually like, you need to get under 110 to compete. But this was, the best you looked and whatever. But long-term vision, we said, okay, you want to compete, you want to do a string of national shows, like this is your goal.
Yeah.
So we can't just diet for no reason if you want to do that in the relative future, which I know you do. So it's like, it's better to call it now. And then we can be recovered faster so that you can get on stage sooner next time.
Salvage that next season and get more time to recover from, again, another dieting phase.
And what was cool is now you're at a place after all of that. So now this is the whole podcast, right? It's been about 10 years of this whole history, right? And you've gotten to this place now where we had we'll consider it a long diet coming off of some, gnarly, hormonal things and whatever, right? Like, but you've recovered really great from this prep.
Yeah.
This is the best probably
post-show period I've ever had.
Yeah.
Physically and just mentally with how I'm dealing with it. For reference, I guess, I'm like 123 now. 123 right now. That can fluctuate just depending, but I'm sitting around like 122, 123. And I'm eating, I would say, more right now than I was in my previous off season when I was 20 something pounds heavier.
Yes.
So that for me is showing like, hey, like we've made a lot of great changes.
Yes.
And that makes me feel even better with like kind of where I'm sitting right now.
And that's the whole point of this. We wanted to walk you guys through that kind of, step by step to show it's not always quick.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not always, hey, like you feel like you're doing all the right things, but there could be something that was, in the way or causing you to be at a place you didn't want to be. But ultimately, that kind of long-term vision, you've held strong with that, and now look at where we are. You know what I mean? So it's going to take, for most clients, several cycles of dieting, taking time off, taking time off, to be at a place where they are comfortably, physically, and mentally. Most people have to build more muscle. That takes time, right? So you're going to have to go through periods of building muscle, going through periods of cutting, and then getting to places where now that's kind of like your norm, and you are comfortable and you are stable. And your norm isn't stage lean, you know what I mean?
No.
But you haven't blown past that
No.
to a point where you're super uncomfortable. It's going to make it really hard for us to prep again. You're training hard, you're recovering, you're eating a good amount. Like you can go out and have untracked meals, and you don't wake up and fluctuate 5 pounds. So there's so many really positive things, but it just takes time.
It takes time to get to that place. Definitely not. I wish I could say like, oh, you'll be here in X amount of time. It's a process that is just a continuous thing, and again, just optimizing whatever you can in each of these phases. When you diet, make sure you're maintaining as much muscle as possible. When you're going to your day to day, keeping little things in check, like your recovery, your sleep, all that stuff adds up over time too. Especially when it comes to making those long-term changes.
Yeah, and that's, I feel like we always say this, but we have to say this like until we're blue in the face, because people still want quick, people still want an answer, people still want direct. No, we can't give that. Now, we can set concrete mini goals along the way, like you did, but that long-term vision, like we're still working towards it, and it's just been a lot of these cycles. And now we're finally to a place that's really, really awesome. And now, we're kind of in that period where like, we're kind of chill right now. We're just kind of chill.
Just hanging out.
And then, before we decide to prep again, we're going to have to get a little bit more strict, right? We're going to have to say, hey, we're going to push food a little bit. We're going to push a few of these factors a little bit to be really dialed in. And then that'll make the prep easier. But it's like, let's just get through 2020.
Yeah, there's a time and place for each of these things.
We just got to get through this year. But so we just wanted to go through kind of that whole history. Because this is such a common situation with clients, most people who are coming to us are going to have extensive dieting histories, good and bad, right? There's going to be some good periods in there. There's going to be some maybe not so great things in there. And most likely you have built up some negative habits. Most likely you've built up some negative adaptations that we have to deal with hormonally, metabolically, all of that. And that is part of what coaching addresses. We have to look at all of these layers and optimize, like you said, optimize all the little things that you can along the way. And even if it's going to take, hey, in a year, think about if we optimize all of these things, where we could be.
Yeah. And it's just crazy, dude. I don't know. Like, that's my
I thought you were going to say something really good.
What?
Like really good, like a good ending.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
It is crazy. Yeah, dude. We are the queens of intros and outros. As you guys know, I need to just take like a course, like a podcast course on like an introduction and an ending.
It's like we just had this like long ass history about me, and I'm just like,
you're like, cool. You're like the turtle from Finding Nemo.
Oh my God, yeah.
Cool, dude.
Cool, dude. So rad.
So that's Gill in a nutshell.
Oh, me in a nutshell. But all those changes make me who I am now. So
there we go. We'll end it on that before it gets any worse. So
great.
Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can check out the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Please subscribe and leave a review.
Oh, yeah. Guys, I found out a hack. So the only way you can give a 10-star review is to leave 2 5-star reviews. Simple math.
There we go.
I wish I had thought of this sooner.
I almost just said 2 + 2 = 10. Wow.
Wow. Okay.
2 times. Okay.
2 times 5 = 10.
There we go.
Who said we would never use this stuff? There we go.
Matt, I like pull up my calculator. I'm like, how do we get 10?
Yeah.
How to achieve the number 10. All right, so you could do that. And if you guys want to check out any of the other podcasts or articles we've written, apply for coaching, send us an email, whatever it is, you can find it on teamlocofit.com, and we will catch you guys next week.
Yay.